Well, good evening and welcome to the Daily Drum. For the first day of July 2025, I'm Ebony McMorris in for Harold Fisher. Tonight, summer safety for our youth, and not just about swimming pools and playgrounds. We're talking about the very real, serious issue of how young people interact with the police during the summer months. Whether it's at the park or the mall or just walking down the street, we know that encounters between youth and law enforcement can escalate quickly, especially when there's confusion, fear, or lack of understanding on both sides. So, what should parents be telling kids if they are stopped by the police? What are their rights? What is the safest way to handle these situations? And how are police departments working to build better relationships with young people? My guests are here to break it all down, provide guidance, and answer those questions and more. Let's introduce our experts. First, my guest is Ron Moten, community activist, violence interrupter, and owner of the Go-Go Museum and Café. My next guest is Donald Temple, civil rights attorney. And also joining us is Sonia Pruitt, retired police officer, Howard University professor, and founder of the Real Black Police Experience, where she focuses on educating and training on policing and race. Glad to have you all here with me this evening.
Good evening.
Well, the summer months are here. That means young people are out and about trying to find safe places and even enjoyment. But there are many spots across the DMV that are saying no to young people, especially when it comes to large crowds of youngsters. Let's talk first about the reality of that situation. I'll start with you, Sonia. When we talk about summer is here, kids are going to be coming out. What first comes to mind?
Thanks for having me. And what first comes to mind is it doesn't matter what time of year it is. This is a really good conversation for us to have, especially in the atmosphere in which we're living, where law and order is a big deal. And, we've had some concerns about the interaction of our community with the police. And so it doesn't matter what time of year, but to your point, it is the summer. More people are out. More things are going on. So one of the things that I'm thinking about is, hey, we need to empower our community to know what their rights are as it relates to coming into contact with law enforcement.
Donald, I'll come to you next because I remember maybe a couple of years ago, there was a panel I saw you on with members of police giving advice to young people because they were talking about experiences that they had with law enforcement officials. And some of their fears. And we heard what the officials law enforcement was feeling at the same time. So now that summer is approaching, what's going through your mind right now as an attorney?
Well, you might recall, I'm not just as an attorney, but I used to chair the Mayor's Civilian Complaint Review Board under Marion Barry for 3.5 years, and I heard all sides. I mean, it is a heightened alert. For me, not only as a civil rights lawyer, but as a person concerned about young Black boys and girls, I don't want to see them have to go across that line when they are handcuffed, fingerprinted, and photographed and brought into the system. So there is this critical issue and tension in our community where we have to be very astute about what's going on. The individual young people, the adults, but also the police, because you're going to encounter situations. Just today, I was in a case involving police false arrest, use of excessive force for a young man, in a case that's in federal court. Our young people need to understand the reality of the day. They need to know how to interact with the police. And that also means in situations, you're going to have police who are inherently paranoid, hostile, stereotypical. And so our young people need to have somewhat of a blueprint. So when they encounter the police, it's not a question of being right or wrong or having an attitude. Some young people want to, as soon as they get stopped by the police, they want to yell, hey, mofo, or what's going on, boom, boom, boom. It's totally converse to that. The name of the game for young people is to be cool, collective, calm, understand the situation, survive the moment, avoid getting arrested where you can. And we can talk about that in a little bit more detail, and then deal with the dynamics at a later point, subject to being keen about things. That means being calm, but documenting things. Where am I? What's going on? Who's who? making those, etc. And it's a deeper dive than that, and I'm sure, will engage a little bit further.
There are curfews in D.C., Prince George's County, making it highly possible that, like you were saying before, that some of these youth are going to encounter the police. And I want to talk about the approach first of that officer. How should that officer approach a youngster who may be violating curfew? And I'll toss that over to you, Sonia.
So I think that we could have a whole show to talk to just police officers, right? But officers know that they should be approaching children, young people, and adults too, with respect, right? There should be, if they have something that they're investigating, if there's some sort of what we call a standard called reasonable suspicion that a crime might have occurred or a crime is about to occur, you approach people with respect. I don't care if you think they are the suspect or not. But short of that, I guess this is why we're having this conversation, because what do you do if an officer approaches you and they are not respectful, or you feel somehow threatened?
I think we also need to break down the term, what does it mean to approach with respect?
Oh, I love that question. You don't go running up on people and saying, you're a subject, put your hands up and turn around. Okay, so what about, hey, we are investigating a crime, or we feel like you all are hanging out in a place that you shouldn't be. Why are you here? Do you live here? Okay, we would like for you to move along. It doesn't take a whole lot, we would think, to speak respectfully to one another. And officers should also be speaking respectfully, identifying themselves, telling a person why they are engaging them, and not just being on what might be a one-sided power trip where you just, well, if I'm the police, I'm talking to you and you should respond. That's inappropriate.
Donald, go ahead, Donald.
What's your question?
Sorry. How should that young person, we see what the officer should be doing. Now, what should that young person be? How should they be responding? And should parents be having this talk with their kids as they venture out? What are some things that they need to be telling them? And how should that young person be responding legally in this situation? What rights?
Well, there are two questions here, and one is regarding the parents and the other is regarding the young people. Let me contextualize and give you a couple terms that our people need to understand. One is reasonable suspicion. It's a term of art, legal term of art. And an officer's reasonable suspicion is based upon them not knowing, seeing, or observing that someone committed a crime, thinking that somebody committed a crime that invites them to investigate. And that becomes confrontational on the street. That's the real deal. Officer walks up to Joe Blow, Muhammad, Khalid, whoever, hey, I think you did something, and then there's a confrontation. Muhammad, Khalid, Joe Blow may not have been doing anything, we don't know. But in order for the officer to apprehend them, that suspicion has to be converted into probable cause, some knowledge of a crime. Generally, in that particular situation, correct me if I'm wrong, Captain, but a Khalid or whoever is being stopped doesn't have to respond. So you have to know your rights. So the first thing is that because an officer asks you questions, you can always say, officer, I choose not to answer your questions. Thank you. Okay, that's one thing. The way that you communicate with that officer is also significant, because if an officer thinks that you're communicating within a certain tone and level, number one, but also knowledge, number two. Also, I choose not to speak. In fact, my family is represented by counsel. If we need to speak to our lawyer, that's very sophisticated. But the minute you talk and the minute you get into a confrontation, yo, mofo, boom, what you stop me for, boom, boom, it's going to get more and more intense. Why is that significant? Because that reasonable suspicion for stopping an officer can be converted, and this is what the police do in the District of Columbia through the country. They have a confrontation. Then we go to disorderly conduct. And the disorderly conduct charge or vehicle allows an officer to take more control of a situation and to do what? To move from reasonable suspicion to probable cause, not for stopping for probable cause for the charge that they may have been stopping you for, but now for disorderly conduct, which is a deviant from the underlying charge that allows them then to take control. Once they take control, now is a confrontation. Well, I'm going to put you under arrest for what? Disorderly conduct. Now, hey, mofo, boom, boom. Now the disorderly conduct escalates to what? Resisting arrest. Then if there's a resisting arrest, then it escalates to what? Assault on a police officer. So we need to have that context, because within the framework of reasonable suspicion, if there's a stop, shut the hell up. They also have anything to say, because you don't have to have a confrontation. Once you move to that and you go under the umbrella of probable cause, then there's a basis to lock somebody up. So for parents and young people, parents need to tell the young people, particularly young men, and not only young men out here in the streets, hey, listen, you got to carry yourself a certain way in these situational dynamics. Then what you say and how you behave can have significant implications. I don't want to see young people getting locked up. I saw or being in these situations, and Ron, I have a lot more to say about that in terms of his experience, because you got another dynamic in the streets where people don't have stuff to do, the recreation, the systems. It's not just the young people, it's the system itself, the level of accountability or lack of accountability to have the kind of meaningful programs, recreation centers, academic centers, and support for these young people so they end up in the street. It's a big level of quicksand, because once they end up in the street, in the quicksand, then you see situations like we saw yesterday with a young man getting sentenced to 221 months for 17 carjackings at 20 years old. That's just a microcosm of what we see with these young brothers and sisters. So the parents need to be able to make sure that they're giving the young people the values enough not to get in trouble. But once they deal with the police, it's kind of a protocol of how you manage that interaction.
Ron, I want you to step in, because, most of it, we've seen you around DC. You deal a lot in the community and talk to young people every day. Help us ground and frame this conversation about how young people are feeling, and also how the relationship between law enforcement officials and young people and what they're communicating with you.
Hey, Ron, though, we can't see your face.
Oh, you can't?
You want us to do it? Yeah, that's better. Okay.
Oh, he's disappeared.
Oh, he just left. So we'll hop back to Ron. You must have disconnected some kind of way, but we'll get back to him when he comes back.
Ebony, I would like to say something following what Donald just said. These conversations are meant to empower our community, our young people, their parents and guardians, all of our community members. Sometimes I'm a part of these conversations, and it seems to me that they're very police heavy, meaning this is what the police want you to do, and you should listen to what the police, because the police have to deal with this and that, and and listen, this conversation should be about education, because the more knowledge we have, of course, the more empowered we can feel, right?
So give us an example of what that. So really, because there are parents that are listening and they're trying to figure out what angle. How do I start? I don't want to stoke fear in my child, but I also want to give them the reality of what is happening in the streets, what they already know, and how I don't want my child to also be a victim. So start this conversation for us.
Yes. So it's not about you have to act a way that the police will feel not just comfortable, but you have to somehow give up your rights. You have to lower your head. You have to speak to the ground. No, we want everyone to feel like when they're speaking to the police, they are speaking to someone who's supposed to be there for their safety. And so you're on the same level, even if you are a young person. This is not a conversation about you are in trouble. It's your fault. This is a conversation about this is what you can do, first of all, to make sure that you get home safely. Because like Donald says, we can always follow up with a complaint or whatever follow-up needs to be had. But this is not your fault because you're having this conversation, unless, of course, you've been up to something, that you've been doing something wrong, right? But just a general, we've come into contact with the police. The police are supposed to be there to protect you, and they're supposed to respect you. And yes, you handle yourself in a respectful manner in those situations, but this is not something that you have to take the burden for entirely.
Yeah, I think I'd like to just embellish on that briefly is by saying that, that's true. And when you are stopped by police, unfortunately, it's not so much just the burden alone, it's the sense of heightened vigilance, if I say, because a police officer, the wrong police officer, and part of my deposition today was asking these officers about their responsibility to tell the truth when they do their reporting, the accuracy, because police officers, whether we like it or not, they lie, period. Okay, and once you get caught up in that system, which is what we don't want, but to your point, I think the dignity and the self-respect is critical. And so if you're respectful and you're shooting straight forward, I don't think that you need to be like Bruce Lee, everything's going on. It's not a defensive situation. It's, hey, my name is so-and-so, and this is, the communication is straightforward and dignified. Ron's back.
So Ron, I want to, you good, Ron? Because I want you to weigh in with us. Oh, you just turned your, he's not, he's just gone. That's all right, though. We're going to keep, because I can't wait for him to talk with us. But when minors, I want to go a little deeper into that, what you were saying, because we talked about what happens when everything is right? Mm-hmm. How they should approach, how the kids approach. But far too many times we've seen it where it does not go that way. And most of the time, not only the officer may be heightened, so are the children as well. Partially also because we've seen so much on TV. When kids are stopped, they not only think about their own neighborhoods, but they're thinking about George Floyd, they're thinking about Trayvon Martin, they're thinking about, the parents are thinking about that, right? And so when we talk about not having this escalate, what happens when you come into contact with an officer who is not doing that, who is not approaching respectfully? And the child is trying to figure out, that minor trying to figure out, well, what rights do I have? What do I do? What are you saying to them then? And before we do that, Ron, you just came back with us, so I want you to make sure we have you in here.
One, I want to say that we didn't get here overnight. In 2010, DC and Maryland cut out all the programs and places that young people can go for after school, go-go's and stuff like that. So to this day, young people have nowhere other than the programs they just created, Department of Recs, etc., for people to go and be young people like we did. So what young people did was they started creating their own way to have fun without any structure or anything. So we got to take, responsibility for that part of the equation. On the other side of it, we have a lot of parents who are not being parents. I worked with the National Harbor last year and helped them deal with this problem with young people, which was smart by them because they let us, a group of people that I brought on, be the de-escalators and people to be the in between the police and conflict. So a lot of times we were able to tell the young people, won't you go ahead and leave, don't do this, don't do that, and it resolved the problem. But you do have some young people who do not listen. And we have parents sending children to the National Harbor and in places like the Wharf, 10 years old, 9 years old, getting out of Uber. Those parents should be dealt with. You can't blame the police for that. That is bad parenting. And we cannot keep on throwing our children on other people and telling people to take care of our babies. And then when somebody correct them, we get upset. That's number one. Number two, I heard Brother Temple talk about a child who had 17 carjackings. And this is what we see in D.C. We saw young people getting locked up 10, 15 times for violent crime and never spend a day in jail. I'm totally against that because I went to jail and jail saved my life. And some people need to sit down for a second, not mass incarceration, not 20, 30 months, but we got to sit them down, do an assessment, and see why they're doing what they're doing and get them in the right direction. Because these are the young people who are later Title 16, and then they get what Donald Temple was talking about 20 and 30 years because we didn't nip it in the bud when we had a chance. We didn't bring the parent and the family in and the educators in and say, can we create a plan to get this young man or woman on the straight path? And so it's systems that are not working. When you tell a child in Title 25 that they can assault a teacher and there are no consequences, we sending our children down the wrong road. Because when I grew up in school, if you hit a teacher, you were dealt with. And you can't have teachers afraid to be teachers. So it's a complex issue for me because I see it beyond just the police piece, but I also understand how the system, every single thing that's working in our community, they got rid of it. Every single thing that's worked, they found a way to get rid of. Even the police. We had a positive interaction with police and children at Ballou Senior High School. When J-Rod got killed in Ballou, that's when they started getting rid of all the programs, including the Metropolitan Boys Club and Officer Friendly program that worked in the school with 23 different neighborhoods and impoverished neighborhoods. And those young people had a great relationship with the police because it wasn't about locking them up. and they can go to the police and talk about something before it happened.
And the question, though, is this, and I talked about that earlier, Ron. The question is, who is they? Who is we? I mean, this is a homogenous situation, and we have to hold people accountable. I mean, it starts even in the grade schools, the elementary schools, east of the river, in terms of the resources that are being deployed with some of these kids. You got teachers calling me, telling me we got a $200 expense limit, and these kids don't have certain resources.
Absolutely. I mean,
so it's a
even
deep
for
problem.
the museum, like we have a operating budget here. So all the Title I schools, we have to let them on free for the trips, right? The other schools have money to pay for the trips. So, but everybody's not going to do that. Our young people don't have the resources east of the river. I don't know how that even happens when you have Title I children and the children we're trying to keep out of trouble, and they don't have a field trip budget, right? I totally agree with you. So they don't get the exposure and things like that other children get. And we know everything in life is about exposure and opportunities, right? So I totally agree with you. That's been a problem for a long time, like the formula of funding for our children in these schools.
But I think, with all due respect, we understand that. Captain understands it. You understand it. Everybody understands it. But the problem is there are realities. And notwithstanding everything that's happening in terms of the inequities, our kids, any single day, any young person who's on the street, depending on the officer, which is what you're talking about, Ebony, can have an encounter that can be a bad encounter. I did a Freedom of Information Act request, Captain, on disorderly conducts 10 years ago. I just wanted to see how many disorderly conduct arrests there were. And what will happen, because my nephew was arrested for disorderly conduct and then released. If an officer has a confrontation, it goes disorderly conduct, assault on police officer, resisting arrest, then the kids get in the system. To the parents, we do not want our children in the system. At the same time, we can't sit back, like you say, parents are not parenting, and we see it and it's pervasive. You know, we see kids out of control, but also we have better minds, Ron. I mean, I don't think that kids need to go to jail. I think we need some programs that are innovative and creative. It's 2025. My father out of Philly was a hardhead. When my father was a hardhead, his parents said, "We sending you down to the farm." You see, I've been to Lorton and spoken to the guys at Lorton. I've invited them to Capitol Hill when I worked on the Hill. They said the number one problem is absence of discipline. Then give them the discipline, but I don't think we need to send kids to jail to get disciplined. I think we need to look at interim programs, and we need to get
it's not really jail that they're going to in a lot of cases.
We are over time. I just this has been so good, but the conversation is not over. There's so much more to talk about. We need to take a quick break and say goodbye to our WHUR audience. And I want you all to join us on the other side, because this conversation on youth and police will continue on Sirius XM channel 141 HUR Voices and on 96.3 HD2. To my guest audience, up next, we will have the original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM HUR Voices and 96.3 HD. I'm Ebony McMorris in for Harold Fisher. My guests this evening are Ron Moten, community activist, violence interrupter, and owner of the Go-Go Museum and Café. Also, Donald Temple, who is a civil rights attorney, and Sonia Pruitt, retired police officer, Howard University professor, and founder of the Real Black Police Experience, where she focuses on educating and training on policing and race. We had a top half hour, so we want to continue in this conversation, and I want to kick it off with you, Sonia, from your perspective. How significant is the fear or mistrust between young people and law enforcement in our community?
There's this power imbalance. The police are scary. People see stories about George Floyd, Tyree Nichols, Breonna Taylor, and they're wondering, am I safe with the police? Is this really what public safety looks like? And that permeates many of the more marginalized communities, the Black community, Latino community, LGBTQ. So there is this overarching fear, and we're living in a country where law and order is the phrase of the day, and it has been for centuries, right? If we can just keep these people in their places and have everybody be afraid of them, then we can be powerful. So fear is a huge issue, which is why community engagement and community policing are such important things.
Donna, let me tap you in because you help with a lot of this engagement and some of the work that you have done. What role do you see community organizations play in bridging the gap between police and youth during these summer months? And I'll say and beyond. It's not just a summer issue. I can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
First and foremost, I come from a police family in Philadelphia. My uncle was a captain of the infamous 39th precinct. His brother was a lieutenant over internal affairs. His other brother was deputy fire commissioner. My uncles, as police officers, started Concerned Black Men in Philadelphia. And Concerned Black Men is instructive because those men, their motto was caring for our youth. And it was important that police understood that we're not here, there, particularly when it comes to our young people. But I find in the spirit of Concerned Black Men, which we started here in DC, that our young people really are undervalued, underappreciated, and underestimated. When you put your arms around young people, and I got 3 of them right here on the other side of this computer, okay, and I will do it every place I go. When you talk to them and you spend time with them, you see that they are willing, they want that love, they want that appreciation, they want that value. But also in terms of, and Moten said something, if you don't have the exposure, it's a kiss of death. So there is no reason in the District of damn Columbia, with all the Black people here doing zillions of things, that we're not doing better with our young people. What happens in lieu of that is there's a damn Chinese wall between us, and we look at us versus them. And what we need to do is figure out how to do the programs. Those police officers on all sides, they're police officers who are good, who care, they're children. I've had police officers come to me about their own children. I've had professionals come to me about their own children. So we have to rethink this whole relationship dynamic, the communication, the programming. And the other thing too is those boys clubs and we used to have police athletic league when I was a young guy many, many moons ago. But you got to have that interaction where sometimes it's sports, but now it's not just sports. Guess what it is? It's technology. And through technology, you don't have to have programs. You can interface with these kids as much as you talk. People do social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever they do. We can create our own technological. It can be innovative, but we got to think about our children. We got to think about how we can develop them, how we can actualize their potential, how we can show them that we care about them. That simply is not happening. Now, we're in the kindergarten when it comes to the government of the District of Columbia, the education system, and the social system doing the kind of things that we can and must do, as Gil Scott-Heron says, to save our children.
Well, I want to get Ron in here. So from a neighborhood perspective, while we have you, how do you feel that neighborhoods can come together to begin to create safer environments? What needs to happen? You were in the top half of the show. You were talking about what needs to happen. So from a neighborhood perspective, what do you see? And then we'll get to what you want to see from the leaders.
I think that people in the communities have to work together. We can throw $1 billion into doing the work, but if people are not working together, it means nothing.
What does that look like, though? What does that look like?
It looks like people with different groups, different community organizations working together, because a lot of times we create gangs. You know, when community leaders are separated and say, we don't deal with them over here, we don't do this, we don't do that, the children watch everything we do. And we segregate our communities and our children ourselves without even realizing that's what we're doing. So they have to see us working together. I remember when I had Peace of Harlots, we used to take children from all over the city and bring them together. And we would do go-go's and things like that. We call them peace goes. And what we would do is make the children go through a training and get a VIP card. And that's how you got into the free go-go's and events that we did. And we made them cool and made it so the children wanted to be there. Now, I try to get for the last 14 years, I've been trying to get the city to go back to doing it. And of course, they don't listen. Everybody try to do things their way. And I know I'm not a rocket scientist, but I know when you educate children of who they are with people who understand them, and once they become proud of themselves and know their history and know their culture, know how to utilize it to benefit them, they stand up every time. It's been done throughout history. But what happens is everybody wants to be the person that comes with a great idea. They take the people from the community ideas, they run with them, and then they try to sell them back to us or try to get us to apply for something that we created. So you see the same thing over and over again. And that's why a lot of things in the community work. But throughout history, if you go back to the Black Panthers, we know that program worked. You know, then the government took and ran with it, right? They didn't empower them. They destroyed them. You see what I'm saying? So we just got to understand, how do we get some of these things going? And we a lot of times have to get them going from the community first before the government embraces them. Even here with Check It, you'd be surprised. I didn't get no help from the LGBT community when I dealt with that gang. I got little help, but we were able to do it without any government money initially. And we had a police officer at the time, Chief Diane Grooms, who worked with me with them, held their police officers accountable who were called us and other names like that. And we worked with those children, and we held them accountable for what they were doing in the gallery place, but we also made them feel like human beings. And then we were able to start dealing with the mental health issues a lot of them had, because most of them had been kicked out of their households. They had been kicked out of the DC public schools. And later the government started embracing us. Some of them own houses now. 2 of them own these buildings with me right now that I'm in. So I can just tell you the examples that work. And a lot of times it don't start with money from the government. It starts with people in the community that say, we're not allowing this BS in our community.
Well, it has always been that no matter what kind of movement that
love and order, not law and order.
Right.
Love and order, because you got to have order. You cannot have chaos in the community. And people got to know you can't have chaos. None of us want that. But
let me stop you right there, because I want to talk about the power of like you were mentioning, some of these events or town halls that help change the narrative around police, around policing and youth. When I used to work as an assignment editor for a local station here, I had to go to many of these town halls. It was devastating to hear some of the youth. One in particular, I'll never forget, this young man stood up, he said, I've been to more funerals than my age. And then the kids started talking about, well, there are no resources in our communities. And then people started naming where they are. And they, because of some of the gangs that were in the area, the groups that were in the area, they were like, well, we're not going to go into that community. I'm not going to do that. That's not even a safe environment. I don't care it is. And then I went and looked at some of these resources and community centers where there's supposed to be computers. There wasn't no computers. It was a building, didn't really have much in there for the kids. And so it was almost like 2 conversations were being had where some of the youth were saying, look, there's nothing available for us. And then you had sometimes a council member saying, well, we have this, and not realizing the plight that some of the children have to go through. So how important, and and I'll open this up, important it is that you become involved in your community, that those who can attend these town halls so you can speak up and make your voice clear and known.
The community is the most powerful thing that we have. Police don't exist well without community. I used to argue with my colleagues when I was the director of community engagement in my police department that the community is not looking for how many times you go to coffee with a cop or you have a slice of pizza. They are looking for quality, not quantity. And I think that is still missing, because, you know, the police departments are part of the community and they should be involved in this conversation. But yet it is the people, it is the citizenry, it is the public who gets to to put pressure on law enforcement, public safety, and the criminal justice system to make change. And Ronald is a perfect example of that.
Let me add to that. You know, I'm not a big fan of rhetoric and theory. And sometimes we just talk till we can't hear anymore. You know, we just talk and talk and talk and talk. What I think is critical is deep thinking, deeper thinking. I want to say this is 2025. We're still looking at things the way we used to look at them 50 years ago sometimes. I mean, idle mind is the devil's workshop. We got to understand that if kids are idle, it's the devil's workshop. The other thing about that is that we have the government of the District of Columbia and its leaders with budgets and programs and agencies. We have churches galore, which are well organized. And I don't know that we're pushing them to the level with facilities. We have fraternities and sororities. We have labor unions, nonprofit organizations, and the like. We have organizations that have a lot of sensitivity with returning citizens who know more than anybody about the dynamic. But are we being, and I'm going to use this word again, innovative, creative, strategic in terms of our resources to maximize them, or are there like roaches moving in all kinds of different directions versus ants that are consolidated and thinking about the best interests of our children? And I think that should also include the young people, because I don't think these young people are as stupid or ignorant as some people think. They understand their situations. And if we give them the opportunity, the responsibility, and if they can see the vision in a way that we have not given them the lens to see the vision. And Ron deals with one dynamic, and there are a lot of kids in this city, and there's a lot of kids that are afraid, by the way, to go to school, afraid to get on metros, afraid because they're dynamics. So we have to get to that point, and we have to empower the young people. We have to empower the parents, but also parental responsibility is critical. If your kid is out here doing all these stupid things, and I was in a case one time, and the lady told me her 16-year-old kid was in DC jail for a targeted assassination. What? You understand? So we need to know what our young people are doing, and if you don't have help, and I'm going to stop here by saying this, there are lots of single mothers in our city. And I ran for office in 1989. That was my number one target group. I think we need to be extremely sensitive to the vulnerability of single mothers and the pressures that are on them as we look at an innovative approach to addressing how we protect our children and to protect them in the context in which we're discussing.
Absolutely. Thank you. I want to circle back because some people didn't hear with the first half of our show we talked about, and that was what we need to tell parents and children and how to protect themselves, their legal rights. And I'm coming back to that because being in the White House under this administration, hearing the rhetoric of law and order, right? We see a lot of stoking. I mean, we're seeing it when it comes to immigrants in this area, which the DC area has a huge population. People just in fear, just being pulled up, yanked up off streets, just everything. So I've gotten calls as a reporter asking, what do I do? What people really don't know their rights. They just don't. And so I want to kind of, as we come to the latter part of this, really put it where the goats can get it, to let people know what their rights are. One, I'm going to start with what are legal protections that minors have if they are questioned or detained by police without a parent present. And as much as we think we may know the answer, if I could tell you the amount of times I've gotten calls for people not knowing what to do. I can't hear you.
The number one rule is don't talk. Okay, don't volunteer anything, but you don't have the comprehension to understand the implications of what you're saying. Officer, I have nothing to say. Okay, period. That's it. Until I have the opportunity to speak to my parents and my lawyer. That's it. If you're stopping the police in a car, and this is common, and it's happened to me even as an adult, stopping a car, hands on your steering wheel, turn your light on, wind your window down, don't yell, cussing and all that. Don't emotionalize the situation. Also tell me why I'm stopped. Don't reach for your wallet in your pocket. Officer, my license is in my pocket. May I retrieve it? Or my registration is here above the phone. Don't move your hand. Put your hand on the steering wheel. And I say that conservatively. Okay? If you're stopped on the street, the same thing. Don't cuss. Don't look for a confrontation. You can be respectful and say, officer, listen, I don't have anything to say. You don't have any authority to search me. May I proceed? May I leave?
I want to say something too in that regard, because I was one of the people who pushed back on the decriminalizing marijuana, not from the criminalizing state, but not putting an education component in it, because the young people in our community did not understand the law. Now, a lot of people pushed it forward because they were trying to make money, and we weren't going to get the dispensaries initially. Now, the thing is, where young people were not educated on, and people in our community, that it's still illegal to smoke marijuana in Washington, D.C. in the community. So if you're driving in your car and the police smells marijuana and they see you smoking marijuana, they can legally search your car. They can legally lock you up on the street. And more young people got locked up for marijuana after this law was passed than before, because the people are not educated about the laws. When young people come into this museum, I educate them on the 13th Amendment of the Constitution. Because most adults don't know involuntary servitude should not be forced upon a man unless duly convicted of a crime, which means in America, you can still be enslaved. They don't know the Second Amendment. So I tell them, the reason why we foul out of life is because we don't know the rules to the game. So we got to teach our young people, like Mr. Temple is saying, the rules to the game of life. And a lot of our people, young and adults, do not know these rules.
Right. Absolutely. I wanted to bring in social media too as well. So I was having this conversation even with one of the cousins in the family, because I was like, we're about to outfit your car. So we put a little camera in the car, and we're talking to him and his friends about what you need to do if you have a cell phone, if you witness something, if you see something, what rights do you have? Can they confiscate your phone or not? How important? Because let's be honest, a lot of the hideous things that we have seen sometimes with some of these encounters, the only reason why is because people have been filming, because somebody took their. So what are the rights to those who may be doing that? Can their phones be confiscated? What are those rights?
You should have a right to videotape. Now, there are some places in the country that have passed some laws recently that don't allow you, I think it might be in Kentucky, don't allow you to actually film the police, but you should stay at a respectful distance back. If you have a cell phone, record, right? No officer should be just coming over, running over and taking your cell phone, although I've seen that happen more than once. Taking your cell phone or demanding that you let them see what it is that you took pictures of or that you took video of. They should not be doing that. That is your phone. And there's also a little thing Ronald didn't talk about called the Fourth Amendment that covers all of this, search and seizure. Donald could, probably talk about that in a whole webinar. So you do have a right to be a reasonable distance away so that you don't interfere with what the police are doing, and record then. And also don't record if what you should be doing is running away or maybe helping somebody who is in really dire straits, not fighting the police, but maybe someone who's having a medical emergency or something. Don't pull out your cell phone for that.
Then let me add to that. I used to think about this a lot and see it a lot, even when I was a little boy, as a young boy, and seeing literally like 12 years old, seeing a woman get locked up by the police and cops twisting her arm. And that made me really sensitive to it. But let me tell you what's really interesting. I'm just saying, as a lawyer that's been in cases, what happens if you bring a lawsuit and you got to go to court, and how a jury and a judge sees things? If what you do, you should be thinking that if you can project that out to say, I got to defend what I'm doing in court, how are people going to perceive it? A police officer could have a situation with you, but if you're saying, hey, mofo, I'm going to pull up, how you package that, it's going to play out in terms of the redemption. Right? Anybody can sue. Can I sue? Anybody can sue. Can you win is another story. But if you are carrying yourself in such a way that a jury is going to be insensitive to your situation, you're going to have a problem. And that's the same way it is, not just in the beginning, in the whole process. If you're taking a picture of somebody and you're out there shouting, to Captain Pruitt's point, if you're taking things and you just, I always say, I say this to my children, emotions don't win wars. And so when the more emotional you are, the more vulnerable you are. So if you're going to take the pictures, do your distance, you have a right. Fortunately, with technology, what do they call it? Things are in the
cloud.
The cloud.
let me ask, if your rights are violated, how do you address it? Do you address it in the moment, or do you go back? What are the proper steps if
Never.
A minor felt that way, or a parent after hearing the story, or witnesses? How do you go, and what legal steps can you take?
Well, I don't want to be talking over captains, but I mean, clearly, if something happens, you cannot win that war on the scene.
So, what are the next steps to take?
So first, the most important thing, first of all, is to document everything, where you are as much as you can, time, officers' car numbers, officer badge numbers, descriptions, number of officers, first and foremost. The second thing is that you want to have an immediate report of the situation, and you can do that by way of a complaint, a civilian complaint, which is not necessarily the only way to do it, but to put it in writing. When that happens, when you go home, you should immediately start writing down. Mom, this is what happened. Blah, blah, blah. Talk to the adults. So this is what happened. So you record it because the evidence has to be as fresh as possible as to what happens. And so then you have to take the recourse that you can, whether it's through the administrative process or whether you're going to retain, depending on the situation, because if somebody gets locked up, it's criminal. And
Right.
if not, if it's a beating or assault or shooting, then it's potentially civil. But evidence is power, and not emotional evidence. Evidence is power.
Absolutely.
The only thing that I would add to that is make sure if there are any witnesses, get their contact information. I love what Donald says about go home and start writing right away. And while you know, in lieu of talking on the scene, be observant. What did the officer look like? Did the officer have on a name tag? What did it say? What kind of stuff were they wearing on their, kids, I'm sorry, I don't mean to say kids, young people, they pay attention to what people are wearing. Well, what were they wearing? What kind of cars were they driving? Write those things down as soon as you can.
We have about 5 minutes left, but I do want to ask, what if these are plain clothes? I mean, the situation with law enforcement is so nuanced now because I see your expression.
You know why? Because the case I have, Ebony, is a plainclothes police case right now that I'm dealing with today. And so when you say that, all these things are like smacking me in the head. But I want to go back to one point.
Yeah.
And follow up to Captain Pruitt's point is that every family should try to have, even if they just give a lawyer $250, say, I want to be able to put you on speed dial as a retainer, so that because I always tell young people in my friends' families, hey, here's my card. You have a lawyer. And so if something happens, say, listen, I have a lawyer. If you'd like to speak to my lawyer, and then that also changes it. Now, they might not even have a lawyer, to tell you the truth.
Right.
But if they say, hey, I have a lawyer, then it puts a different context to a situation. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
And no, I think that's a good point. Whether you got one or not, have somebody that you say you about to call. This is the person that's going to be representing you. That might back them up just a second or two. But yeah, I was saying that the conversation with law enforcement is going to be so nuanced in this era that we're in, because there is this new conversation of what if someone is a plainclothes officer? What do I ask? What do I do? What rights do they have in that situation? I do want to talk about some solutions that we have. So are there resources online or locally where families can learn more? Sonia, I'll start with you on that. If I'm a parent and I'm concerned about this, where can I go to find this or download something to stick in my kid's pocket or put it in your car? This is what you do, A, B, C, D, E, and F.
So the ACLU has some good information on their website. But if anybody wants me to come and talk to their group, to their kids, to their young people, to adults, to their church, you can contact me on my website, therealbpx.com. Boom. And I can come out and give you some more detailed information.
I think before you even go there, I want to reference something really quickly because Donald, you even said this earlier about getting the community involved and getting churches involved and things like that. This is a good way to have somebody come out and talk to your youth group. Take one of the nights that you have youth to bring someone in and to talk about this very issue. That's where you will have a large group of young people, whatever the event is that you're planning. I think this would be an important piece to add into it. But go ahead, Donald.
I want to flip that and talk about police education.
You got like 1 minute. Go ahead.
Yeah, because there's a stigma. The way that the police view the city east of the river is different than the way they view it west of the river. So we had to do some education. I want to go back to the 5-finger point. We got to bring everybody together. The police got to be part of the deal. The young people got to be, the parents, the schools, the fraternities, sororities. The city government has to look at things totally a new way than the way that they're looking at it to make a better city. And we have to be innovative and creative.
Thank you for that. That was right on time. We got just 1 minute left, but I want to thank you really quickly. Donald, where can people go to get more information about you or to follow up with you?
Well, I have a website somewhere in social media. That's the best place. And they can email me. I don't really talk to people too much on the phones because it's very distracting.
Right.
But dtemplelaw@gmail is a way to reach me.
Okay. And Sonia, where can people go to get more information about you and find out about if they want your services?
TheRealBPX.com, TheRealBPX.com. All of my info is there.
I love it. Well, we are out of time. I want to thank all of my guests for joining us this evening. We lost Ronald Moten, but we all see him around town.
We're never going to lose Ronald Moten.
Right, we're never going to lose him. We're never going to lose him. We had a bad connection, but I want to thank all of my guests for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ebony.
Thank you, Donald. We
Absolutely.
certainly hope the information will help to keep our community safer this summer and throughout. This is the Daily Drum for Tuesday, July the 1st, 2025. I'm Ebony McMorris. Harold Fisher returns tomorrow. Thank you for listening and good night.